Welcome to Lost Relation Chronicles.
My name is Emma Foster, and while the word chicken was traditionally used to describe husbands, I believe it's now just as fitting for wives. In today's world, women take on jobs that were once reserved exclusively for men. We even go to war alongside them. So why shouldn't we be considered chickens too when it fits? For thousands of years, women were homemakers, responsible for raising the children. Meanwhile, some of our husbands frequented brothels, had affairs with neighbors, or were habitual womanizers. Not all of them, of course, but there were enough to leave their mark on history. Given this perspective, I think the term chicken has become gender neutral. And if that's the case, then I was definitely a chicken in my own right. I was born and raised in a middle-class family here in the Midwest, with an older brother. I attended the local high school during a time when women's soccer was still gaining traction in the U.S., but my school was a trailblazer in the sport. I joined the team and played as a defender, specializing in free kicks. I quickly gained a reputation for my powerful free kicks and penalty shots, scoring crucial goals when the team needed them most. After high school, I went on to college to study business administration. I continued playing soccer on the women's team, and my strong free kicks and penalties earned me a bit of a reputation. Goalkeepers definitely didn't like me, and I sometimes joined the forwards and midfield players, scoring powerful goals from way outside the box. The crowd loved it. Although I wasn't good enough to make it to the U.S. women's national soccer team, I thoroughly enjoyed the sport. During college, I dated a few guys but never found the right one. I was a tall, blue-eyed blonde with good grades to match my athletic skills. After college, I landed some solid job opportunities in my hometown, worked hard, and earned promotions and pay raises. It was during one of my business meetings that I met Kevin Brooks. He worked at a partner company, and we hit it off immediately. Kevin was handsome, charming, and we had undeniable chemistry. We started dating, and before long, we were in love. Kevin proposed, and I accepted with excitement. He was a tall, dark-haired, blue-eyed man who had been divorced. He told me that his first marriage hadn't worked out, and they had parted on good terms. His ex-wife had moved back to Alabama, and they didn't have any children. I didn't press for more information. He seemed trustworthy, and I had no reason to doubt him. We dated for a long time, and I never saw any red flags. Kevin seemed like the perfect match for me. We had a big wedding, surrounded by our parents, relatives, and friends. Together, we bought a beautiful home in the suburbs. We were very much in love, and our marriage was filled with passion. I eventually stopped taking the pill, and we were blessed with 2 sons. Our first, George, was named after Kevin's father, and a year later, we had Ed, named after my father. Even though I stayed home to raise the boys, our financial situation was solid. Kevin was promoted and eventually became the local CEO of his company. His hard work paid off, and we lived a comfortable life. Every summer, we alternated between vacations in Europe or tropical destinations, and life felt almost perfect. One day doing laundry, I noticed lipstick stains on one of Kevin's shirts. Ed was 5, and I felt my 7-year happy marriage was falling apart. I cried, dried my tears, and evaluated my options. Kevin was a good provider, and for the time being I decided on the chicken solution. It became clear to me after a time that not only was he a womanizer, he was a serial cheater husband. I came to know 2 of his lovers. Later I will tell you how that happened. In such circumstances, many marriages become a non-declared, or sometime a declared open marriage, but I did not look for extramarital activities. I lived for my children. The reason for this was very interesting. Before Kevin, I had dated a man who told a funny story to me when we broke up. He, Richard, told me his mom was a cheater, and he discovered this accidentally when his father was seriously ill and he attended college. But his mom did not know Richard was aware her cheating. His father was a strong smoker, and he got lung cancer. His father was clueless, and Richard did not want to reveal this secret to him because his dad's cheating wife, Richard's mom, looked after him well during his illness. Richard did not want to spoil his daddy's last days before his death. However, Richard did not like his mom, and he looked for a job far from her. She lived in Maryland. Richard told me he did not want an American wife like his mom was, so he looked for a wife in Asia. He found a Christian Indonesian girl, her name was Maria, who converted from Catholicism to Protestantism for Richard. Later, we were in the same church as them since they lived near us. Richard and Maria had 2 beautiful daughters, and my younger son married their younger daughter, and how strange life is. I know now that Richard and his Indonesian wife have been living a happy life since that, but Richard did not invite his mom to their wedding, and Richard's mom was not at the wedding of my son Ed and Anne. I did not want my sons to think of their mom as a hooker, like Richard thought of his own mom. I was a betrayed wife and a chicken for a long time. Other events also caused me to remain with my husband, the sad experiences in my distant family and among friends, school fellows. Such was the divorced life with children and the negative effects on the life of the children in the broken family. I did not want the difficulties of a broken family to impact my sons, so I remained married to Kevin. Kevin liked his sons, and he was a great dad at home. This was the second reason why I decided to stay. When Ed was 12 years old, I looked for a job and found one at a local company. I worked hard, and when Ed was 14 years old, I thought of divorcing. I gathered a little secret money, and I asked a PI firm to look at my husband. They found evidence of an affair between my husband and a colleague of his. The PI firm gave me a DVD with a video and some photos on it. They gave information about this woman and her family. She was Rachel Reed and her husband was Adam Reed, an engineer. They had 2 daughters. The younger was same age as Ed. I got photos of the husband and the children as well. However, at this time George was in trouble with his friends in high school, as they all had begun using dope. Kevin and I had to struggle with George to avoid the drug abuser life. The local police arrested the source, and we were lucky George did not become a drug addict. If I had begun the divorce, George would have become a drug abuser, I thought several times. Kevin broke up with Rachel, and he struggled for George as well. When George went to college, Kevin found a newer woman for himself. I had his affair investigated by the same PI firm that spring, which I used earlier. I had videos and photos on thumb drive and DVD. George went to college, and he wanted to be a lawyer. Ed began the last year in high school when I got an offer for a 1-week training in Calgary, Canada, in September from my boss. There would be a trip to Banff as a socializing program in the training on Tuesday, and I was very interested in the Rocky Mountains before wintertime. I went to the airport by cab and I flew to Calgary, Alberta on Saturday morning. The training began in a hotel on Sunday morning. Let's check the story from Adam's side. I'm Adam Reed, the youngest of 3 siblings. My sister is 8 years older than me, and my brother is 10 years older. Growing up, life wasn't easy. My dad worked hard with heavy machinery at a car junkyard, and my mom was a supermarket cashier, starting her job when I turned 12. Money was tight when we were kids, but things got a bit easier once my sister and brother moved out. My brother became a skilled welder, and my sister worked as a shop assistant. In high school, I excelled in subjects like math, physics, chemistry, and IT. During the summers, I worked for my father's boss at the car junkyard, earning pocket money by learning how to salvage useful spare parts from wrecked cars. That job gave me a lot of extra cash for the rest of the summer, and it was satisfying work. I was a tall, dark-haired, brown-eyed guy, and my teachers encouraged my parents to send me to college to study engineering. The family agreed, and I went on to pursue an engineering degree. I did so well in college that I earned a scholarship for my master's degree. Unlike most of my peers, I wasn't really into the usual social activities. While they were drinking beer, I preferred low-fat milk. After graduating, I landed a job at a local oil and gas mining machine factory, starting at the entry level in the workshop. Over time, I worked my way up to become a developing engineer. The job was perfect for me because it allowed me to be creative, designing specialized machines and tools for oil and gas mining companies. The real thrill, though, was the occasional need to travel to oil and gas rigs to solve urgent, complex problems on site. It was a demanding but exciting job, and I thrived on the challenges it brought. I dated girls at college, and when I graduated with master's degree, I found Rachel, who graduated in business administration. She was a brown-haired, green-eyed girl. We dated for a year, and I asked her to be my wife, and she told me yes. So we got married, and she moved with me to my city. We lived the average family life in our house in suburbia, and we had 2 beautiful daughters. My wife was at home with our daughters. Though I loved my wife, I still began to save a secret stash for emergencies she did not know about, and did not have access to when our younger daughter Grace was born 2 years after Nora's birth. I saved this secret stash for special circumstances, as I lived in such an environment where divorced people were more than the average. My decision to save money just for myself was rooted in my messy familial background. My parents lived a happy life, but their elder children had a lot of trouble. My 10-year older brother cheated on his wife, but they reconciled their relationship. Then my brother cheated again, and my sister-in-law divorced him with 2 children. She found a good man, and she married this man who divorced from his cheating wife with 3 children. His ex-wife lived with an abusive maggot who wanted to spoil his elder daughter, but the ex-wife called the police in time and they arrested him. My brother remarried, and they had 2 children. My brother was a serial cheater, so his second wife divorced him too. A stepfather brought up these children again, but this stepfather did not marry the children's mother in order to get child support money from my brother. My brother moved to a small apartment and paid the child support for 2 children. He could meet his children at my parents' house only. My sister was a cheater too, but she got the custody for 2 small children, and she married a good man and they had a new child. My sister cheated on her second husband too, after which they reconciled, but when my sister cheated again, he divorced her. She remained alone and was despised by her 2 ex-husbands who did not forgive her. The 2 ex-husbands organized such schedule that they visited their children on alternate weekends, so my sister was either with 1 child or 2 children on the weekends. She could hardly date because of this time schedule. My friends were in similar situations with their divorces, and among my relatives, divorced people were clearly overrepresented, too. My best friend became a gambling abuser, and his wife went to her parents, her brother's family, and her parents-in-law on weekends to get meals for her children. We invited them several times for Sunday with the children, and Rachel cooked for them. His wife had enough of her husband's gambling abuse, so she divorced him and went to work. She found a divorced good guy later, who had 3 children by his ex-wife. One of my other friend's wives also cheated on him, and my friend divorced her with 2 small children. His ex got the children's custody, and he complained to me that he could rarely see his children. Among my and Rachel's distant relatives, there were many divorced parents, and later among Rachel's friends as well. The children lamented everywhere, from near and far, about their broken life. I thought it was important to own a secret deposit for a divorce or a family emergency, so I gathered 3% of my income. I thought I could surprise my wife with this found money after 35 years of successful married life. Rachel was at home with Grace and Nora. The sex was similar to that of other couples with children. We did it 3 times a week. We lived a happy life. I worked at a good company. I did creative work with good colleagues, and I had 2 beautiful daughters and a loving wife. I was happy. When Grace turned 12 years, Rachel went to work for a local company. She worked hard. She even worked overtime sometimes, and she praised her job. I heard of her boss, Kevin Brooks. Rachel told me her boss recommended promotions because she worked so well. I was totally clueless about her. When Grace was 15 years old, Rachel took me to her company's Christmas party. My company and her company parties had been at exactly the same time earlier, but this year my company's Christmas party was a week earlier. This was an exception, because the next year parties were on the same day again. Rachel took me in her car. I think she thought I would drink a little more, but she should have known that I preferred milk to beer, and the distilled alcoholic drinks did not attract me at all. I had taken her to my company's party, and she could see I did not drink a lot. We sat with a couple at a table. The husband worked at another department of my wife's company. We talked a little with them. When my wife went to the restroom, that colleague looked at me in a funny way. Later, I was introduced to Kevin Brooks, the boss of my wife. He told us he had to go home early to his ill wife. She had a bad temperature from the flu. We stayed a little longer. I got a problem with my stomach, and I had to go to the restroom. I sat on the toilet bowl when 2 male colleagues of my wife came to the restroom to piss. I heard one of them telling the other, "It's interesting that Rachel's clueless husband and her earlier lover boy Kevin met here. The love affair's been over for half a year. Kevin will look for a new woman meet soon, and he will transfer Rachel to another department," responded the other. "It would be funny if Rachel worked together with Kevin's earlier mistress, Martha Martinez," said the first, and they were laughing. Martha's husband was so clueless as Rachel's husband is now. "I don't want to tell them such bad news," said the second speaker. "Neither do I," said the first voice, and they laughed. They left the restroom. I was sitting on the toilet bowl, and I was crushed from the bad news. I thought of killing Kevin and Rachel, but I knew Kevin had gone home to his ill wife, and I abandoned this train of thought. I did not know how, but an idea came to my mind. When I thought of the overrepresented divorced relatives, friends, and their children, I decided I would divorce Rachel, but I would wait until Grace graduated from high school. I decided to become a chicken for 3.5 years. Naturally, if Rachel humiliated me, brought STDs, I would begin the divorce earlier than Grace's graduation. However, I thought of my secret stash, and I was glad that I had been so wise. I went back to our table, and I told my wife that I felt bad and had to go home. I thought Rachel was glad we went home quickly too. I did not pretend I was in bad state. I really was, but mostly from the discovered affair of Rachel. She made me a cuck. I hated her with all my heart, and the love became hate in my heart. Next day, I started the Oscar Award actors play for my daughter's sake only. Rachel's 2 colleagues were right, and Rachel was transferred to that department 2 months later, where Kevin Brooks's earlier mistress Martha Martinez worked. Rachel told me she liked her new job at the other department, but she was on bad terms with Martha only. She complained about Martha several times. I was secretly laughing at her. At my workplace, I ate lunch with a colleague from the IT department. Will Smith had a second wife with 3 children, and they lived a happy life. We discussed cheating wives. He told me his first wife was a cheater, and he was lucky because he discovered her cheating before any childbirth. He used secret video cameras, bugs, and he sent the sex videos to her parents, relatives, friends, acquaintances, and he published these videos on sex portals too. He told me his ex-wife found a serious relationship and they were planning the wedding when he sent the videos with a letter to her fiancé. The wedding was canceled. The ex-fiancé of his ex-wife thanked the videos and the letter to my colleague. The fiancé hired a PI firm and they gave him evidence that his soon-to-be wife had a lover again. I asked him if he could build a similar spy system in our house. He told me he could collect the files in a spare computer. I could look at it with a password, but I had to delete the old files. I praised my idea of my secret money because this activity was invisible financially. When my wife worked, my daughters were in high school, my colleague and I asked one day off from our jobs, and we built the video and other bug systems in our house. I checked the file monthly and deleted the old files. Nora went to college and Grace was in her last year of high school when I discovered something on the secret spy system. That time I was working on an oil rig to solve a difficult problem, and I had to work on weekends as well. The spy files showed that while I was away, Rachel became the sex teacher of an 18-year-old neighbor boy. Grace almost caught them. The boy had to jump out through the window. I discovered the sex teacher activity during my monthly file checking in the beginning of September. The following day, Wednesday, I had to travel to Calgary. In Canada, Alberta, there is a center of the oil and gas mining industry, and I had to meet our partner from oil and gas mining firm to solve some problems. In addition to this business travel, my boss sent me for a special symposium too. The environmental issue was a strong incentive to develop new mining methods. The new method was to use the drilling instruments to bring up metal compounds of or from the deep. Generally, the mining industry makes shafts and tunnels, and workers mine the ore and coal with mining machines from the deep. The symposium would start on Sunday morning in a hotel in Calgary. The social program was to be an all-day trip to Banff in the Rocky Mountains on Tuesday. The symposium would end on Saturday. As my boss told me, Adam, this would be a new important market possibility for our firm. I was full of anger with my wife, but I could suppress my hatred when I worked, so I went to Canada with a buried hate in my soul. Let's check the story from Emma's side. I was flying to Calgary, Canada, and I was thinking about my life. I lived with a serial cheater, a-hole husband, and I was a model wife and a model mother for 2 sons. My younger son, Ed, attended the last year in his high school. Would Kevin continue to be a good provider for me in the future, or would he replace me with his younger mistress? Such thoughts were circling in my mind in the plane, and I had a bad vision about my family. I did not like this chicken roll at all. I drew a conclusion about myself in my mind. As I had been an athlete earlier and I still had a strong need for exercise, we furnished the basement with fitness machines and I used them frequently. Sometimes I did jogging with my sons. My husband used other gyms instead of ours. Sometimes my sons used the fitness machines with me. I did not smoke or drink much and I slept enough, so my body was in good shape. I could deny 10 years from my age easily. The problem was the collection of the mate candidates. There were few good mate candidates in the market. Most good husband candidates were attached with girlfriends, mates, or wives. To find a good mate was a difficult thing. To find another divorced serial cheater, a violence abuser, an alcoholic abuser, a drug abuser, a gambling abuser was, however, so painfully easy. I was in a trap situation, without any simple solutions. I arrived at Calgary Airport and went by cab to the hotel where the training was to be held. I got surprised at the reception of the hotel. There were 2 tables with young college student girls who assisted the new arrivals. The first table was for the participants of a mining symposium, and the second table was for the participants of our training. The program firm organized 2 events for the same time in the hotel with the same timetable and socializing programs as well. The hotel had several bars, restaurants, and conference halls. The trip for the Rocky Mountains was common with the participants of the mining symposium. I got special vouchers for meals and soft drinks, but alcoholic drinks had to be paid from our pockets. I got a name badge and the girls told me I had to wear it in the hotel. I got the magnetic key of my room and I went to my floor. When I stepped out from the elevator with my suitcase, I was almost petrified from the shock. Adam Reed was about to enter the elevator. I could read his name badge, and he was definitely Adam Reed. He politely greeted me and went to the ground floor. I remembered him from the photos and videos of the PI firm, and he did not change with time. He was handsome, and he had a few gray hairs only. I occupied my room, took a shower, and went to have dinner in the restaurant of the hotel. I wore my name badge. I found Adam alone at a table. He was handsome and sad. I greeted him and asked whether I could sit next to him at the table. He agreed. So we introduced ourselves to each other. "We're from same city and I know you," I said to him. "Oh, do you?" He sounded genuinely astonished. My husband's name is Kevin Brooks. He's the CEO at the company of your wife. His pupils became very narrow. I felt the hate in the air. The waitress came to us to take our dinner vouchers, and she gave us the menu. We could choose from 3 types of dishes, and we asked for sparkling mineral water. I knew I had to be straight and brave. I felt I could be honest with him, so I said, I don't like them either, and neither did I like their affair. The hate disappeared from his eyes, and a funny confusion with a tinge of surprise appeared on his face. After a short hesitation, he asked me straight, Why do you live with him then? I'm a responsible mom for 2 sons, as you're for 2 daughters. When I said this sentence, I flushed, and I knew I felt more than simple sympathy for him. Earlier he was embarrassed, but now I was. He smiled at me and said, We're in the same boat with the same souls. I knew we had good chemistry. I smiled back at him. The waitress came back with the sparkling mineral water and asked us about our orders. We chose the same dish. We've got the same taste, too, Adam remarked. We laughed a lot. My husband was a dry man, but Adam had a good sense of humor, just like me. I knew I was in love with him, and I could not explain why, but I felt I could conquer him. We were talking about the interesting organization, because I came to the training and he came to the mining symposium to the same hotel. He told me he would go to Edmonton on Monday and Tuesday after the symposium to solve some problems at an oil and gas company before coming back to our city. I told him I would go home on Sunday morning. Both of us were very excited about the trip to Banff and the Rocky Mountain next week. We ate our dinner and went to one of the bars. We talked about our children, and we showed our children's photos to each other, and we both knew we were proud of them. We laughed a lot. I felt he liked me. We went to our floor and arranged a meeting before the elevator at 8 o'clock in the morning. We would go to have breakfast together. My training and his symposium would begin at 9 o'clock. I went to my room, and my sex fantasy was connected with him. I did not feel guilty with such a serial cheater a-hole husband as Kevin and with Adam's wife Rachel. I thought he would be a good second chance for me. The following day, we met at the elevator, and we went to the restaurant where there was a buffet. Adam drank only milk. He told me he preferred milk to beer. I found this very interesting. We went to our respective programs, so I to the training and he to the mining symposium. We met at lunch too. We avoided the home problems, and we talked about our jobs. Adam's firm wanted new market possibilities for special or mining by drilling techniques, and the symposium dealt with this. After the afternoon sections, we met for dinner again. We were cheerful and we laughed a lot. I now know that both of us felt so free. We went to the bar to talk after dinner. There he began the serious issue. Dear Emma, I'm in such a mood that I want to give up my oath a year earlier. I vowed to myself I'd wait until the graduation of my younger daughter Grace before I start the divorce. I flushed from the happiness and the possibility of my secret dream coming true. I clouded him with my pheromone. He noted this. I was honest with him. I wanted to divorce him 3.5 years ago, I said. Adam looked at me in surprise. Why didn't you get through with it? He asked. My elder son had a problem with his schoolfellows with drug. Kevin broke up with your wife, Rachel, to help with our son, George. He was honestly astonished. Oh, I see. Did you succeed? Yes, in the end we did. And that's why I wanted to forgive Kevin. I thought I'd forgive him everything when we saved George, because he was with us. However, he's got a young mistress now. I used the same PI firm secondly. I've videos and photo files about your wife and my husband, and now I've evidence of his new young hooker too. He looked at me in a funny way and he said, I told you yesterday we're in the same boat. Are you afraid he'll replace you with her? I don't understand your husband. You could deny almost 10 years. Emma, you're a cheerful, lively woman. I flushed again. Thank you for your compliment. Yes, I'm not sure in my marriage. I don't trust Kevin. I became brave and I went on. However, the divorce isn't an easy decision for a woman who is over 40. To find a good mate is difficult at this age. He understood me totally, and he smiled at me with a warm comprehension. He said, Don't think we men can easily find a good mate either. There may be a larger selection to choose from, but the chance that we pick damaged goods is also greater. We laughed a little. I knew he thought I would not be a damaged goods for him. We went up by elevator to our floor. When we stepped out of the elevator, the corridor was empty, so we turned toward each other and hugged impulsively, then kissed long. After the kiss, I told him, Adam, we're free. We aren't cheaters. It's them who are. Our spouses are. He did not answer, only with a long, passionate kiss. Let's check the story from Adam's side. I went to Edmonton after the symposium to solve some problem at an oil and gas company. Emma sent her first email to me from our city. When she arrived home, she wrote, I love you, and please do not forget that I will begin the divorce in grace. and you will follow me 3 months later. I will send my next mail next week. I answered, it will be difficult for you to wait a year. I love you too. We had discussed our future and had decided it together in the hotel. Emma would begin the divorce the following year in Grace, and I would follow her 3 months later. We would meet accidentally so that Emma could tell everybody she knew me from her PI video files and photos, and that's where I would be familiar to her. This would be a white lie to our families. We had not known that time, but Emma's idea of the 3 months delay for me turned out to be the most fantastic. I am thankful to her. It was 2.5 months delay in reality, but it was worth. I will tell later why it was a blessing. We would not meet at all until my divorce started. We arranged that we would write 1 email a week, except for emergency. I must emphasize again that it was very difficult for both of us, but we accomplished. The symposium was a big success for our firm, because a Finnish mining company wanted to use our machines and instruments for nickel mining. They developed a special mining technique, which uses bacteria to extract the nickel from the ore, and drilling instruments were needed to yield the nickel solution from the deep. I went to Finland several times to set our machines and instruments. This nickel mining was a financial success both for our partner and our company as well. I went home for the sake of my daughter only, and I used Rachel like a prostitute or a free-of-charge escort girl. I regarded her as a hooker in my mind. After my encounter with Emma, my hatred set in a level, and I checked my surveillance system weekly from my workplace. But Rachel did not take any more lovers in our house after the 18-year-old sex student neighbor boy who went to college in another city. She might have had other lovers at her workplace, but the house was lover-free, according to my bugs and video cameras. I wanted to use the video files to avoid the counseling session ordered by the court. I wrote in an email to Emma that I was thinking of buying a tape measure to cut a little of it day by day until the divorce started. She replied that she laughed a lot at my idea. I was glad to have found a woman with such a good sense of humor as Emma. Rachel lacked any sense of humor. While Nora was at college studying to be a math teacher, my younger daughter, Grace, wanted to be a nurse, so she wanted to go to college, too. When she graduated from high school, I went to her graduation ceremony with Rachel. Emma sent her most important email to me after her son's graduation, saying I gave Kevin the divorce documents and he was glad for it. He told me he would have given me his divorce documents if Ed had gone to college. The damn son of the bitch. I was right about him. I hired a condo with 2 rooms. Thank you for waiting for me. You will be with me soon. I love you. Meanwhile, at the college, Nora found a guy for a serious relationship from our city. He was a cocky, noisy guy. I did not like him, but I did not tell my opinion about Luke Marino to Nora, who thought she found the right man. Emma and I planned the 3 months delay, but how the 3 months became 2.5 months, I tell you now. Nora often brought Luke to our home, but sometimes they went to Luke's parents as well. When he was at us, he was very cheeky with me. I was tolerant with him for the sake of my daughter. Rachel liked him. The last 2 months passed slowly before I finally went to the divorce lawyer. Emma and I chose different lawyers to avoid any connection between us. The lawyer told me he would be ready with the documents within 2 weeks. I could begin the divorce when I wanted. I wrote this to Emma. Emma answered she found an apartment for me 3 buildings from hers, and there was a supermarket in between. She wrote we could meet there accidentally after my divorce began. I used the secret money and I rented the recommended apartment for 4 months, and I took some of my personal belongings to the apartment. Soon after this, I had to go to Finland for a week to solve some problem. When I came back and I went to work, I checked my secret spy system routinely. I wanted to delete the files, but I almost fell off from my chair when I looked at the video files more thoroughly. The cocky, impertinent Luke Marino, my older daughter's right man, was the lover of my cheating wife. As our divorce was to be started soon, Rachel could have had a lover like a White Walker from the Game of Thrones, E.T., or a Green Martian. It didn't matter to me. However, my daughter's happiness was one of my most important things in my life, so I was totally angry with Rachel and Luke. I saved the files to a thumb drive. I wrote an email to Emma. I knew Emma checked her emails several times a day for emergency in the last days. I was right, and she answered quickly, Adam, you should speed up the divorce proceedings. Tomorrow you should move to your apartment. You should invite your daughters into the apartment for a cinema performance. You had enough room for 3 people in your apartment for 1 week. College start. Good luck. I love you. I phoned my lawyer for my job, and I asked the divorce documents for Friday. I asked a day off from my boss because of family problems for the next day. When Rachel went to work, I took many of my personal things in the apartment. My daughters went away before Rachel, so they were clueless about everything. I phoned them at lunchtime, and I told them to meet me in front of the building where my apartment was. We went up to my apartment. They understood that I wanted to divorce, but they were astonished, sad, and silent. We were sitting in front of my laptop, and I put the thumb drive into the laptop. Nora asked me, Dad, what do you want to show us? I answered with a question. Have you ever watched spicy sex videos? Dad, we live in the 21st century, answered my daughters together. These files will be very funny with interesting actors, I said. Nora began to understand something, but Grace was a little confused yet. I began to play the videos. My two daughters were hot from the anger. First Nora, then Grace began to cry loudly when they saw the betrayal. Daddy, who are these people? I've no mother any longer, and I've no boyfriend either, sobbed Nora. Daddy, we're with you, said Grace in crying voice. I don't want to live with my mother. I've no mother now, said Nora. Then Grace added, still crying, Daddy, I want to live with you until I start the nurse college. I won't go back to our house. Could we remain here with you? Forced Nora. We should go to the house for your most important things before she arrives home from her job, I told them. So we brought many personal things of my daughters in my and Nora's cars. We put everything in pile in my apartment. Nora phoned Luke later. I heard her saying, Dear son of a bitch, I wish you much pleasure with your cougar. Go to hell. Then she closed the line. When Rachel came home, she tried to phone Grace, Nora, and me, but we did not answer. Next day she tried again. But when she got the divorce documents, she stopped phoning. She understood everything. I thought, Luke Marino informed her as well. My daughters told me they would never talk with their mom again. They love only me. I was proud of my daughters, and every night when I went to bed I cried a little from the pride and the fondness in secret. I wrote everything to Emma, but in a way that my daughters could not note anything about her. Emma wrote that her sons suspected something about Kevin's mistress because they told her they preferred her to their father. The following week, I checked the spy system and I found that Rachel cried in the house all day after arriving home from work. My daughters, and I did not feel sorry for her at all. Luke Marino was not on the video files anymore. Later, when she was at her job, I brought some of my further personal items from the house and Michael Kevin's son, and I dismounted the surveillance system. Emma wrote she saw me several times with my daughters, but she did not want to disturb us. When my daughters and Emma's sons left for their colleges, Emma and I met accidentally in front of the local supermarket, just as we had organized it on email. We hugged each other smiling, and we stuck together in a passionate kiss. Let's check the story from Adam's side. Emma and I became a couple, and we had two secrets from the world, Calgary and this. Our children began the baby factory, so we had to repay the babysit occasions. But we did it with pleasure to look after our grandchildren. Nora started, then Ed, and George with Grace followed. They repeated this round again. Our children were 5 years old when we four went to a restaurant to celebrate Emma's birthday. We entered the restaurant when I recognized Luke Marino. He was with his wife and with a 2-year-old boy and a 2-month baby girl in a baby carriage. They were just leaving the restaurant, so we met in the center of the place. He recognized me too, and he told me in a very loud, sarcastic voice in my face, Hi, Chicken Daddy, a new hooker? I answered from my gut without thinking of the 4 children who were with us. Dear Luke, are your children from your mother-in-law? Is your mother-in-law good in bed? When I said this, I looked at his wife, who was a little astonished by the awkward situation. Luke's arm moved quickly and his fist knocked my head. Total KO. I fell unconscious for half a minute and collapsed on the floor. When I returned to consciousness, I saw Luke weltered in pain on the floor beside me and wailed loudly, gripping his balls. My wife Emma was standing with her arms on her waist and was just telling everybody in the restaurant, if somebody tries to injure my husband, they'll get the same balls kicked from me. I was a good soccer player. While Luke's wife was trying to help him, I could stand up with the help of my wife. The staff of the restaurant ran to us to separate the two families, but Luke could not stand up from the floor. He was moaning from the constant pain, so the ambulance was called and Luke was taken to the hospital. Next day, the police came to us to interview my wife and me. The doctors had operated on Luke. He lost one of his testicles as a result of my wife's successful soccer free kick. It was destroyed totally, and the other testicle had to heal up for weeks. He became sterile. Luke's wife had denounced my wife to the police. We asked for help from George, who recommended his colleague. He was a good criminal lawyer. He found the restaurant had a security video system, and he suggested the police ask for the video file from them. The restaurant provided a copy of the security video file. The police and the district attorney office watched the video file, and they determined my wife defended me after an unexpected attack, so the court would reject the criminal case. The staff of the restaurant told the same thing to the police. Our lawyer got a copy of the video recorded by the restaurant's camera. We celebrated the rejected accusation with a whole family meeting in our house. The main event was when we watched the security video together. My daughters and I remembered an earlier cinema event One of the main characters in that video was same person, Luke. We copied the restaurant's file to a DVD and we watched it on the TV. We watched it more than 10 times, actually. At that scene when Emma kicked Luke's balls, whole family shouted loudly, "Goal! Goal! Bomb goal! Mom, you are a superstar. Emma, you are super." Everybody behaved as if they were supporters watching a soccer game. After the 10th replay, we stopped the video and such a thing happened, which Emma and I and our children would not forget until death. My 2 daughters came to my wife. Each Emma and I did not know anything. Our children organized this. Nora began, "Emma, thank you for saving our daddy. We've no mom and we ask you." Nora and Grace. Grace was pregnant with her second child. The serious, responsible mom started to cry and Emma did the same. At last Grace finished Nora's words. "We would like to ask you to be our true mom." They gave the 2 bouquets of flowers to Emma, who accepted them, and she wiped her eyes. She said feelingly, "Nora, Grace, ever since I got to know your dad, I've thought of you as my true daughters." She hugged Nora first and then Grace. Every adult in the room cried. The older children looked at their parents surprised, wondering what the matter was. However, they soon recognized that the adults were crying from the happiness. Ed said, and told Grace and Nora why they didn't dare to ask Emma about this. Emma looked at and with watery eyes and told her, "Thank you and for being so smart and wise." Emma and I hugged each other and started to kiss. The younger adults began shouting, "Get a room." Everybody began laughing or smiling to put an end to the serious minutes. Emma whispered in my ear, "Adam, thank you for giving me such happiness." Every guest went home. We bedded our twins. After shower, we went to bed. We had sex twice a day. Emma looked at me in a loving way, and she told me, "I fell in love with you when you talked about your daughters." I answered, "So did I. When you talked about your sons." We smiled at each other. Grace and George had their second child, a baby girl. I thought the baby factory closed. Around this time, Ed came to us on a Saturday for a lunch with the grandchildren, and Ed began to talk about his father. Ed met him in the morning, and he brought very fresh news from him. When we put down the children for their afternoon nap, he told us the latest news. My father wants to divorce Nancy. He moved to a condo. I and George assisted him in the morning. Emma and I looked at each other, surprised. Emma asked, "Do you know what happened?" "Yes. Father suspected something. So he used an infidelity home test, and the test showed positive result. He went to his divorce lawyer and a PI firm. I know his lawyer. I met him during my divorce proceedings," said Emma. Ed continued. The PI firm found a rather young stud, who's a police investigator sergeant, who's her lover now. He's 4 years younger than Nancy. "Interesting. Kevin likes the young gals too," remarked Emma, at which point everybody started to laugh. The lawyer suggested that my father should have a DNA test to establish paternity for the children. The results showed that the elder girl, Patricia, is not his, so the younger girl, Susan, is my blood sister alone. We were astonished a little. I broke the silence. It's like when the executioner gets the capital punishment. Everybody laughed loudly. Ed carried on. The lawyer told my father that even though he had a prenuptial agreement, he would still have to pay children's support for Patricia as well, because Patricia was above 4 years when the DNA test was made. The lawyer advised my father to find out who was the biological father of Patricia. If he knew who the man was, he could start a lawsuit against him to pay the children's support money in settlement. My father remained at home with Nancy for a while, and he played an actor's role, and said he played his role well enough. We didn't suspect anything for 2 months at all. Father told Nancy he knew Patricia wasn't his, but he would like to reconcile for Susan's sake. Nancy isn't too smart, and she believed this. My father got all information from Nancy this week, so he's begun the divorce, explained Ed. Who's the biological father of Patricia? Asked Emma and I almost at the same time. Even Nancy doesn't know that. She was at an orgy with her friends, while my father was away on a business travel. The men were unknown people, and she had sex with more than 8 males that day. But she drank much alcohol too, so the 8 people may actually be even 10. She doesn't remember their names at all. She did sex bareback, and she was lucky to avoid STDs. She's not too smart, said Ed. If your father had had a DNA test made for you and George, he wouldn't have been disappointed at all, replied Emma. Mom, George and I know this, of course, Ed assured her. We soon got to know that the court gave alimony to Nancy for 5 years, and she got the children custody, because Susan was below 4 years. Kevin would pay child support for both children and Nancy got the house until Susan turns 18 years old. The prenuptial prevented Kevin from having a 50-50 share. Kevin promised he would try to treat Susan and Patricia the same way, but he warned the family that he would not be able to hide that he loved his biological daughter, Susan, better. He would give less in his will to Patricia than to his other 3 biological children. We organized our birthday day together with the twins and scheduled the all-family event for Saturday or Sunday. So, the small family event for my birthday took place on Wednesday. We went to a restaurant, and we had told our older children where we would go. We arrived at the restaurant in time, and we sat down at the table. When the waitress brought the menu, we realized that the woman sitting at the next table alone was Rachel. Emma and I looked at each other in surprise. Why was she here? Then Rachel began to cry. We sat there in shock. It was an awkward situation. Mommy, Daddy, why is this woman crying here? Kids asked confusedly and curiously. I was astonished from the situation, but Emma knew what to say. Kids, this crying is a special birthday present for Daddy, she said sarcastically. I prefer cheerful presents, replied one. So do I, reinforced the other. The waitress came with the first round dishes, and she put them on our table and went away. Suddenly, Rachel stood up and told me, "Happy birthday, Adam." Then she told Emma, "Emma, you're a lucky woman." She turned to all of us. "Bon appetit." "Goodbye." "Bye-bye, Rachel," we told her, and she left. Emma and I looked at each other, and we thought the same. We should keep secret about our birthday restaurant in the future. I said, "You're right. Next time Kevin will come to our restaurant to cry at the end," Emma replied. We laughed a lot. We got to know that at work Rachel had asked Kevin about the place of our birthday supper, while Kevin had learned it from George. We had kept secret about our birthday restaurant since then. Our elder children understood us, and they told us they would blurt out to Kevin accidentally. Emma and me got information about Rachel from her relatives, because my older daughters had some connection to their relatives from Rachel's side. She lived together with a man for 3 years, who left her for a younger woman. She had been alone for a half year, and we thought this action was a step to the peace. She would have liked to meet the grandchildren. However, my older daughters told us their true mom was Emma, and they did not want to meet Rachel. This action did not bring peace for her, as every time since the big event Emma was standing in front of her collection of shoes for a long time, and finally she selected the strongest pair of shoes, saying, "Honey, strong shoes are very important in case of emergency. They may be our secret weapons." Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.